We asked for it and we're delivering. After our first video on Argentine metal, the comments absolutely exploded with recommendations from passionate fans who told us we barely even scratched the surface. And you know what? You were absolutely right. Today, we're going to dive deeper into the Argentine metal underground with 9 bands and albums that came straight from your comments. This isn't a ranked list, just 9 incredible albums in no particular order. We've got everything from experimental progressive metal that sounds like nothing else on earth to brutal old school death metal, groove-laden new metal throwbacks, and even some modern trap-infused extreme metal that will blow your mind. If you thought Argentine metal was just thrash and heavy metal, prepare to have your world expanded. We're talking sludge mixed with dial-up internet sounds, groove metal from ex-members of legendary bands, death metal that rivals the American and European classics, and so much more. So let's dive into these fan-recommended deeper cuts from the Argentine metal scene. Starting off with something completely different, we have Los Random and their 2011 album Todos los colores del. This is progressive and experimental metal that defies easy categorization. The album runs about 56 minutes across 8 tracks, and trust me, those 56 minutes will take you to some strange places. The weirdness starts immediately. Take the song Cachefaz, for example. It literally mixes electronic sounds that remind you of old dial-up internet with crushing sludge metal. Dial-up internet meets sludge metal. Sounds bizarre on paper, but somehow it works. Then there's Elchi John, which brings prominent bass guitar into the mix with electronic elements and death metal vocals. The album's centerpiece is the 11-minute epic Tururu, featuring slow, sludgy guitar riffs combined with psychedelic sounds that create an almost hypnotic atmosphere. The album even includes a 2-minute space rock interlude called As Far As Impossible that serves as a breather between the heavier moments. This is not an easy listen, and it's definitely not background music. Los Random created something that stands completely apart from everything else out there. If you're tired of hearing the same old metal formulas and want something that genuinely surprises you, Todos los colores del is worth your time. It's experimental, it's weird, and it's uniquely Argentina. Now we're moving into groove metal territory with Raíz and their debut album Manteniéndose Real from 2001. The project has some serious pedigree. It was formed by brothers Andrés and Javier Jimenez after they left the legendary Argentine metal band Animal. So expectations were high and they delivered. If you're a fan of Sepultura's roots era and you need to hear this album immediately, Manteniéndose Real takes that groove metal and new metal sound and infuses it with world music elements, creating something that feels distinctly Latin American. The vocals have a strong Phil Anselmo influence from Pantera, which makes sense given the time period and style. Guitar work is excellent, mixing down-tuned heaviness with thrashier riffs. Some songs incorporate rap elements, which was very much the style in the early 2000s new metal scene. Guitar solos are intense and technical, and there's a distorted bass guitar sound that adds a real depth to the low end. Some tracks lean more towards the new metal sounds of bands like Korn or Cold Chamber, while others stay firmly in groove metal territory. Here's the thing about this album. It's really good, but the timing was unfortunate. Released in 2001, it came out when new metal and groove metal were starting to fade from popularity. If this had dropped around 1995 or 1996, it might have gained much more international traction, but don't let the timing diminish what the Jimenez brothers accomplished here. Manteniéndose Real is a powerful statement on groove and aggression that stands up excellently today. Next up is Jesús, Mártir, and their 1998 album, which I'm going to call Sudamerican P, because the full title contains a word that YouTube doesn't allow. This Buenos Aires band plays death, thrash, and groove metal, and the album showcases all those influences. Released in 1998, this album has a very 90s sound and sits firmly on the extreme side of metal. You can hear influences from bands like Machine Head and Fear Factory throughout, with touches of industrial metal, maybe a little bit of Ministry in there, but the biggest influence seems to be post-Max Cavalera Sepultura, especially that era when they were blending world music sounds with extreme groove metal. The album is heavy and aggressive, with a mechanical precision that characterized late 90s extreme metal. There's one song that reminded me of Korn, but that's not representative of the whole album. Most of it stays in that death groove territory. The production is solid for an independent Argentine release from this era. What's interesting is that this album might have actually influenced the Raíz album that I just talked about, even though Raíz came out 3 years later. You hear similar ideas being explored here first. Jesús Mártir was clearly ahead of the curve in the Argentine extreme metal scene, and Sudamerican P deserves recognition as an important release from this era. It's aggressive, it's heavy, and it captures that late 90s extreme metal sound perfectly. Moving into 2005, we have Mastifal with their album Carnívora. The band is from Entre Rios, started as a thrash death metal act in 1995, but evolved into a melodic death and groove metal sound by the time they recorded this album. Carnívora is definitely more extreme than the first few albums I've discussed. This is groove metal taken to death metal extremes. Vocals are much harsher here. You've got brutal death growls mixed with higher pitched black metal style screams. The album is absolutely packed with death metal guitar riffs, and the drumming is intense with plenty of blast beats to keep things violent. What makes this groove metal rather than straight death metal is its rhythmic transitions. The songs shift tempos and grooves constantly, creating a dynamic listening experience that keeps you engaged. Despite the brutality, there are moments when the bass guitar really stands out, and they use clean guitar tones sparingly for atmosphere. The guitar solos are melodic and technical, adding another dimension to the songs. I'll be honest, I personally preferred the first two albums I talked about, but there's more about my own taste than the quality of this album. Mastifal clearly knew that what they were doing, and if you're a fan of Argentine extreme metal, Carnívora is a must-hear. The band lasted until 2016, briefly reunited in 2022, and split up again in 2024, so the album represents them at their creative peak. It's brutal, it's groovy, and it's uncompromising. Now we're going back to 1995 for some old school death metal from Vibrion. This Buenos Aires band released Deceased on the Frostbite label, and it's a brutal slab of 90s death metal that stands up against anything coming out of the United States or Europe at the time. If you love bands like Obituary and Cannibal Corpse, you need to hear this album. Vibrion delivers those sick and vile death metal riffs that go with guttural vocals. They sound like they're coming from somewhere deep and unpleasant. The band's signature move is using tempo changes. They go from breakneck speed to crushing crawl within the same song, keeping listeners on their toes. The slower sections make excellent use of deep string bends for added atmosphere and heaviness. When they speed up, the drumming becomes intense with plenty of blast beats to satisfy death metal purists. The production is raw but clear enough so you can appreciate the musicianship. This was actually the first death metal band that I listened to from Argentina, and it was a pleasant surprise to discover that country's death metal scene could compete with the genre's established powerhouses. Vibrion clearly studied the masters and then added their own South American flavor to the mix. Here's an interesting piece of Argentine metal history. When the band Malone split up, Antonio Romano and Carlos Cuadrado decided to reform an old extreme metal band they played in during the mid-80s called Cerebro. They recruited drummer and vocalist Willie Caballero, and together they formed Visceral in April 1998. Back in the 80s as Cerebro, they played primitive black metal reminiscent of Venom and Celtic Frost, but Visceral went in a different direction. This is modern thrash metal with a decidedly old school sound. The self-titled album from 1998 is packed with classic thrash metal riffs and harsh vocals, slightly reminiscent of Lemmy from Motorhead. You can hear the influence of Metallica's Black Album in places, especially on the song Escape, where they go for a more accessible sound, but most of the album stays on the extreme end of the thrash spectrum, delivering aggressive riffs and intense energy. It's interesting to hear a late 90s thrash album that deliberately sounds like it could have come out in the mid-1980s. At a time when many thrash bands were experimenting with groove metal, nu metal, or industrial elements, Visceral choose to keep things pure and traditional. That commitment to the classic thrash sound makes this album stand out from its contemporaries. If you wish thrash metal had never evolved past the 80s, Visceral's self-titled album is exactly what you're looking for. Speaking of bands that stayed true to thrash, we need to talk about Nepal and their thrash sound, even when the 90s music industry was pushing everyone towards groove metal or industrial metal. Released on Metal Command, Raza de Traidores is pure thrash metal through and through. The album is filled with galloping guitar riffs and harsh vocals, and the bass guitar is very prominent in the mix, giving the songs a powerful low-end foundation. The production has that old-school rawness that actually adds to the album's authenticity. Some standout tracks include Falsos Profetas, a thrasher about killing false prophets that hits hard both musically and lyrically. The title track, Raza de Traidores, delivers fast riffs and a cool guitar solo that shows real technical skill. Vibrion al Tiempo is another headbanger with awesome vocal delivery, while Justicia Maldita tackles themes of evil thoughts with appropriate musical aggression. Nepal represents the stubborn determination of the Argentine thrash scene. While many of their contemporaries were changing their sound to stay relevant, Nepal doubled down on what they did best. The band was active from 1984 to 2001 and then reformed in 2023, proving that their approach had lasting value. Raza de Traidores is a time capsule of early 90s thrash done right and deserves more recognition. Now for something completely different and extremely modern. Barro is an alternative metal project from Buenos Aires led Cariel, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, better known as the trap duo Cariel and Paco Amoroso. They released their debut EP in 2023, followed by the full-length album Constantmordor same year. This is the only modern metal album on today's list, and it's very different from everything else. Imagine thrash metal and groove metal being thrown into a blender with electronic music, trap, EDM, and hip-hop. That's Constantmordor. It's extreme, experimental, definitely not easy to get into after just one listen. The album represents a bold fusion that you won't hear anywhere else. Cariel brings his trap background into a metal context, creating something that challenges both genres. It's harsh, it's electronic, it's heavy, it refuses to follow any established rule book. Some metal purists might reject it entirely, but you have to respect the ambition and originality. This is music for people who want to hear what happens when different extreme metal genres collide. It won't appeal to everyone, but it sounds unlike anything else out there. Barro represents the future of metal experimentation, showing that Argentine metal continues to evolve and push boundaries. Whether you love it or hate it, you can't deny that Constantmordor is unique. We're ending with something special, Logos and their 1993 album La Industria del Poder. This is Christian metal from Argentina, which makes it unique right from the start. But what's really interesting is the band's history and connection to Argentine metal royalty. After the legendary band V8 dissolved, several members started new projects. Logos featured the most V8 members out of any of these projects and practically the same lineup that recorded V8's last album. You've got Alberto Zambarit on vocals, Miguel Roland on guitars, Adrian Senchi on drums, and Jose Amorin on bass. Musically, Logos plays speed metal and traditional heavy metal, recalls bands like Judas Priest and Saxon. The album is packed with headbanging riffs, memorable choruses, and plenty of speed metal elements, some mid-paced anthems, and Christian lyrical themes that set it apart from the other metal bands. The album opens strong with Machinado and Como Relámpago en la Oscuridad, both the heavy metal classics with choruses that stick in your head. La Última Batalla is an epic track running over 8 minutes. Memoria del Continente Nuestro serves as an instrumental breather, featuring acoustic guitar with lead guitar played over it. No Te Rindas brings them a melodic speed metal energy, while Ven a la Eternidad and En la Ciudad Violenta offer mid-paced anthems. The album closes with a title track, another 7-minute epic that's probably the darkest sounding song, despite the Christian message. La Industria del Poder proves that Christian metal can be just as heavy and powerful as secular metal. The V8 pedigree is evident throughout. Songwriting is top-notch. The album deserves recognition, and one of the most important Argentine metal releases of the 1990s. And there you have it, 9 hidden gems from the Argentine metal scene that you demand to recover, from the experimental weirdness of Los Random to the groove metal assault of Raíz and Mastifal, from the old school death metal of Vibrion to the pure thrash of Nepal and Visceral, and the Christian metal of Logos and everything else. Thanks for watching. If you want to check out the first episode, it's right here. This is JC Rockin' Metal Reviews. Like, subscribe, and thanks for watching. See you in the next one.